Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm going to be reacting to 3 scary storytellers for you all. And the first one is Shining Gold Tales, and the video I picked out to react to is 3 true chilling Airbnb horror stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
Last summer, I was on a road trip with my cousin Andre.
Okay.
We were both in college at the time, but we went to different schools in the same state. We worked for the first 3 months of the summer, and then we took August off to relax and do a road trip. We were planning to drive from near Chicago all the way to California to visit our uncle who lived out there.
Sounds like a fun trip.
It would be a few days' drive, but we had time, and we wanted to draw it out a little bit to make it a good experience.
Well, you wanted to take some time off from work and go on a little road trip? Do it. Let's just see what happens along the way, shall we?
Neither Andre nor I really liked planning ahead, so we simply set off and decided to figure it out as we went along. We had planned to take a week to get there, so we had some flexibility in how long we could stay at each place. On the 3rd day of our trip, we were already in Utah, which meant that we were ahead of schedule. So we decided to stay the night in a small town that neither of us had heard of before. I was driving while Andre was on his phone, searching for places to stay for the night. After 10 or 15 minutes of scrolling, all he could find was a small hotel that was way overpriced. It looked nice, but we were students at the time, and it was way out of our price range. Then Andre checked Airbnb and found a place for less than half the price of the hotel.
Yeah, hotels nowadays, they jack the prices up if they're like one of them luxury brand hotels. Well, you probably get a good deal if you stay at one of them cheaper motels that are run like a mom and pop type people. But if you find a deal on Airbnb, you better take it before it gets booked up quick.
It was a small house with just a single bedroom. Actually, it was just the main floor of a house, but the bedroom had 2 single beds, so it was perfect for us. I continued to drive as Andre explained the place to me. It was about a 10-minute drive from a really small town, and it was really quite remote. It was hard to believe that it was even worth having an Airbnb in that place. The area was not exactly a tourist destination either, so it was not at all surprising that we were able to get it on such short notice.
Well, probably because a lot of people don't want to book it if it's in like a remote area. I mean, I wouldn't. If it's not part of a touristy area, you never know. You might have thieves prowling around the property to steal something, or the homeowner is very sketchy and sneaks into it all the time while people are staying there. You never know what happened in that area.
Andre booked it, and we continued to drive. It was only about an hour away by then. When we got to the house, we waited in the car in front, and Andre texted the owner. We were on a dirt road. The house was hidden behind a couple of large trees. Willow, I think. They looked really out of place in the desolate landscape that was the desert. The house was 2 stories of yellow brick with light brown shingles on the roof. Neighbors were few, but there were several other houses in the area. Within a minute or two, an older man walked out from behind the house. Andre and I got out of the car and walked towards him. He introduced himself as Jack, the owner. He was a smaller guy, maybe 50 years old, with long gray hair and a bald top of the head. He was a white guy, but his skin was so tanned from the sun that it almost feels strange to call him white. He seemed friendly enough, and we learned that he lived in the apartment on the upper floor of the house. We had the main floor. Once he handed over the keys, Jack disappeared behind the house. It was getting late, so Andre and I hung out in the living room and talked a bit, and then we headed to bed. I was having trouble sleeping at the time. I would never sleep all the way through the night, and it was even worse when I was not able to sleep in my own bed. So while Andre was fast asleep, I was tossing and turning.
I know some people are like that to where they don't care what bed they're sleeping on. They're tired and they just fall asleep, while other people like the guy that's telling the story have to toss and turn. I mean, I would too, because it would feel weird sleeping in another bed in someone else's house or in a hotel. But once you get comfortable, you'll be asleep in no time. If nothing disturbs you, that is.
At around 3 a.m., I heard a noise. was the front door. It was a long, high-pitched creak, as if someone were opening it slowly.
Oh,
I
heck
waited there
no.
silently for 30 seconds, then I heard faint footsteps coming from the living room. I got up from the bed quietly and tiptoed towards the door, which was left open by a crack. I peeked out the door, and I could see the glow of a flashlight out there. Someone was there, looking for something. I could see the dark outline of a person, but I couldn't see any detail. That is until the flashlight hit the window and some of the light reflected back. It was Jack, the owner. Even more terrifying, I could see a gun on his belt. When I saw that, I retreated back to my bed and pretended to be asleep. There was no telling what that guy was capable of. I realized how vulnerable we were. It was the middle of nowhere, and we were alone in a stranger's house.
And I'd be wondering why on earth would he be showing up this late while he's got guests sleeping there, especially with a gun. Like he's planning on robbing them. I don't know, but yeah, I'll be scared to death. I'll be trying to wake up my friend real quick and tell him what in the world's going on.
Worse yet, Andre and I never told anybody where we were. I guess if anything happened, then Airbnb's records would be useful, but I was not thinking about that at the time. I lay there for several minutes shaking, almost crying, until eventually he left. When I was sure he was gone, I woke Andre and whispered to him what just happened. We quietly snuck out of the house, went to our car, and drove away. In the morning, we went to the police station, but they were not helpful. I got the feeling they didn't like outsiders in that town. Our only recourse after that was to report it to Airbnb, which we did. Fortunately, he was banned from the site after that. In the car the next day, we discussed Jack and what he could have been up to that night. He didn't come into the bedroom, so I guess he didn't want to hurt us. The only reasonable explanation was that he was trying to rob us, but since we didn't leave anything in the living room, nothing was stolen. I guess he wasn't willing to risk waking us up. Either way, it was a really scary thing that happened, especially when I saw that gun on his hip.
You might be right. He probably was planning on robbing you, but since you didn't have nothing in the living room, he didn't want to risk waking you guys up and you just left. But yeah, you see your Airbnb host carrying a gun, I'll be terrified too and packing up once he's gone. But thank God Airbnb kicked him off the site so he won't be able to post that listing no more. And I'm glad that they're okay and they got out as soon as possible before he showed up again. So let's get to story number 2.
I used to have a girlfriend named Hillary. We had been dating for a little over a year at the time.
Right.
Although things weren't serious yet, we were looking to take a small step in our relationship. That's why we decided to go away together for a weekend. We lived in the city, but there was a small town a few hours away that seemed like fun. I won't say which one it was for the sake of privacy. It was around the year 2015, and Airbnb was really taking off in popularity, so we decided to try it. After searching for a while, we settled on one of the cheaper options. We really wanted to keep costs down, but we chose a room in a house that had a private bathroom. Other than that, everything was shared. That was okay for us, because we didn't have the need for a kitchen or a living room to ourselves. We booked the room, and when the weekend came, we headed there. The house was in a quiet residential neighborhood, about a 15-minute walk from the downtown area. It was an unassuming older house. You would never have known that it was an Airbnb just by looking at it. It had 2 stories with dirty white vinyl siding and green trim around the windows and the roof. We walked up to the front door and found a lockbox fastened to the wall. I checked my phone to get the code. Then we opened it and took our key. They had the whole process automated, so we didn't even have to meet anybody face to face. We then opened the door and entered the empty house.
That would seem like an easier way to get inside the house. Just have the key ready in the lockbox. And once you get up there, you just hit a button and it'll open up just so the homeowners themselves don't have to waste their gas getting up there to meet you.
There was a large living room and kitchen on the main floor, which was tidily arranged and decorated.
Oh, wow.
I don't think it got much use because everything looked brand new. We walked up the stairs to our room, still not seeing another person. When we entered our bedroom, I put my backpack down, and Hillary did the same. We then heard a set of footsteps outside our room. Not a big deal. We figured there would be other guests. I took a quick shower, and then we headed out to explore the area. We left our room, and we didn't see the other person on our way out.
Well, it's probably not another guest staying there. Someone that's not supposed to be there. Someone that broke into the house and they're hiding, planning on robbing you guys. You got to be aware of that.
We spent most of the day sightseeing, and then we went out for dinner at a restaurant. It was late by the time we were ready to head back to the house. We walked in the front door, and the house was seemingly empty, just like before. We walked up the stairs and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, Hillary was sitting on the end of the bed. We talked for a bit, and eventually she asked me, "Did you hear that last night?" "Hear what?" I replied. She then told me that she woke up and heard someone outside our door in the middle of the night. I wasn't too concerned at first. Maybe it was just someone going to the bathroom. Our room was the only one with a private bathroom, so the other guy would have had to walk down the hall if he had to use it in the middle of the night. But then, Hillary told me something troubling. She heard someone try to open our door. We figured that whoever it was in the other room must have done it. He must have been some kind of creep, we thought. We still hadn't seen the guy yet, if it was a guy. He just stayed in his room whenever we were around. I suggested that we leave, but Hillary wanted to stay. We still had a lot of things we wanted to do. I thought it was a bad idea, but I gave in, and we stayed another night. We went to bed late again the next night. As soon as I lay, I fell asleep. I woke up to Hillary shaking me gently. A few seconds later, I realized why she woke up. There was a sound from outside our room again. Someone was jiggling the doorknob. Not only that, but I could hear a metallic scraping sound, like someone was trying to pick the lock.
Get out of bed and either call the police or be man enough to confront this person. But that would be creepy to wake up to.
I sprung up from bed and shouted for him to get out of here. Then the noises stopped, and we heard footsteps slowly walking away. I suggested that we wait for a few minutes and then run for it to get out of that house. Hillary agreed. We sat there terrified for what felt like a long time. The minutes were dragging out, and we were checking the time constantly. It was 3:45 in the morning. We quietly gathered our stuff and cautiously peeked out the door. As far as we knew, we were alone in that house with some unknown predator. It was even more scary that we had never even seen this person. He was like a phantom, out there somewhere tormenting us, and we didn't even know what he was capable of. The dimly lit hallway seemed empty, so I went first, holding my girlfriend's hand tightly. Each step was agony as we tried to get out of there undetected. I cringed on the last step of the staircase when it made a loud squeak. When that happened, we ran for the door. We ran out of there, and we didn't even bother to close the front door. Next, we jumped into the car and drove home. In the morning, I called the owner of the house, and I told him what happened. I was going to call the police, and I wanted to find out who it was staying in the other room. When I finished my story, there was nothing but silence on the phone. Eventually, the owner, clearly distressed, told me that there was nobody else staying in the house that night. We were the only ones that rented a room.
I knew it won't no other guest. Someone clearly was in the house waiting to sneak into someone's room that books the place and steal some of their valuables that they brought with them. But they made so much noise they woke them up. I'm just glad they waited and got their stuff packed up and left, just so they wouldn't have an encounter with that dude. That is scary.
I bought a house a few years ago. I lived in an apartment at the time that I really liked. So instead of moving into the house, I kept the apartment and put the house on Airbnb. I really bought it as an investment anyway. It was a half duplex near the downtown area, so I figured it would be a good location for a short-term rental. There were plenty of tourist destinations nearby. It was older, but the main floor was nicely renovated before I bought it.
You know, that is kind of smart, buying a house for like an investment and then turning around to rent it on Airbnb and you stay in your apartment. You make a little extra cash that way. But then you always got to keep in mind if you rent it out to guests, you might have some that might make a mess and don't clean up afterwards. Or you never know, you might have people that steal the stuff you got set up in the house for like decor that might be valuable.
It still had the classic charm of the 1960s on the outside, red brick with white window shutters. I never got to know the neighbors, but they were all college students, so I imagined we could go tit for tat on noise complaints if I wanted to.
Right.
The basement was also original to the old place. It was one dark, cold room with concrete floors and exposed pipes and vents. The ceiling was low, so it wasn't good for much other than storage. I didn't keep anything valuable down there, so when I put it on Airbnb, I didn't bother to install a lock on the door to the basement. Running an Airbnb was a lot of work at first, because I would have to make sure to be at the house to hand over the keys to each tenant. After a while, though, I installed electronic locks on the door, so I could simply text the code to each person or group. I always made sure to change the code each time. I'd heard enough horror stories about old tenants returning to rob the place or terrorizing future tenants.
That's always a safety issue. That's smart of him to change the code on it multiple times. Because if you have a guest that remembers it and they'll come back to rob your place or even the tenants that are staying there at that time, it's always a hassle and a nightmare to deal with. And plus, it's better to have electronic locks that you can send trustworthy guests the code instead of meeting up with them with the key all the time.
It's well worth it to change the code each time. My cleaner would do it most of the time anyway. The house was rented one weekend by a guy named Jens. He said he was in town with his brother and cousin for a bachelor party. By then, I had the system pretty much dialed in. I rarely even went to the house at all because I'd hired a cleaner to prepare the place for each guest. That combined with the electronic locks and the need for my personal attention was pretty much zero. When the time came, I sent the lock code to Jens in a text message. Then something surprising happened. He called me. I answered the phone and said hello. A man's voice came back. Hey man, it's Jens. It's okay if we have a few people over, right? Sure. Don't get too crazy though. I laughed. I mean, the neighbors won't call the police or anything, will they? He asked. No. They're usually fine.
Okay, I've been wondering why is he asking this question? I got a feeling he's trying to make it seem like he was going to have a party there at the house, but in reality, he might be there just to steal a bunch of his stuff and he don't even know. But if you make a lot of noise and the neighbors hear it, they'll probably call the cops.
I told him. Then he hung up. I didn't think much of that conversation at the time, but in hindsight, it's very creepy. The weekend came and went without issue. No noise complaints from the neighbors. Nothing. Not until Monday afternoon, when I got a call from the cleaner. I answered the phone, and Joanne, my cleaner, was on the other end. She was in an absolute panic. She sounded like she was being chased by a pack of wolves. She begged me to come to the house to see what happened. I took the afternoon off from work and drove to the house. When I got there, I could see Joanne standing on the sidewalk, a few doors down. I parked my car on the street and walked over to her. She had calmed down significantly, but she was still quite distressed. I asked her what the problem was, but all she told me was to check the basement. I opened the front door and swung it open. It was not as bad as I was expecting. There were some beer bottles and probably a few spilled drinks. The place smelled like a party. I was not that far out from college, so I knew what the aftermath of a rager looked like. It was like a 5 on a scale from 1 to 10. I walked through the house to the basement, and when I got there, the door was wide open. Most likely left open when Joanne sprinted out. I walked down the stairs cautiously. When I reached the bottom, I hit the light switch. It was a single bulb in the middle of the room. When I looked around, I saw something out of place in the far corner, but I couldn't tell what it was. I walked over there, and when I saw it close up, I understood why Joanna had freaked out. There was a pool of blood on the ground, as well as several bloody footprints leading towards the stairs. Possibly even more disturbing was that next to the blood was a large wad of bloody duct tape. I was pretty freaked out too, but I held it together and called the police. Then I headed outside to wait for them. When the cops showed up, Joanne and I told them what we found and where to find it. The house was closed off as a crime scene for a few days. Jens was contacted by the police, but he had an excuse for what was down there. Also, there were no corresponding reports of a victim, so there was really no evidence to go on. Because of that, charges were never placed. I did, however, report them to Airbnb. Although we couldn't prove it, I believe that something sinister happened in my basement that night, and it gives me goosebumps every time I think of it.
Okay, the only thing I could come up with is they got too heavy in the drinks at the party and grabbed somebody, bound them up with duct tape, and deleted them. Hence why there's duct tape down there in the basement with blood on it. But then, where was the body at? Did someone wrap them up in black trash bags and put them in the vehicle? I don't know. But after seeing something like that, I would probably just not only have the house clean from top to bottom good, but I'm selling the place because that is creepy. You would never think that you would have guests that would have a party and all of a sudden you might find some blood down in the basement in the big pool. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Shiny Gold Tales reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day.